now call the Common Council meeting of October 5th, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Here.
Lurick.
Here.
Dukenyak.
Here.
Tillman.
Here.
Gale.
Here.
Guzikowski.
Here. Would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Doug, will you start us off?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And that will bring us to the minutes of September 21st, 2021. If you'd all take a moment to take a look. If there's any discussions, questions, corrections, or errors. And when you're satisfied there's none, motion, please.
Kirkowski make a motion to approve the minutes of September 21st, 2021.
Oracle second. Roll call.
Alderman Lurick.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Gale.
Abstain.
Guzikowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
And that'll get us to the recognition portion of tonight's meeting. First is a mayoral proclamation for White Cane Safety Day, which happens this October 15th. Catherine, would you please read that in the record?
Certainly. White Cane Safety Day, October 15th, 2021. Whereas White Cane Safety Day is a national observance in the United States celebrated annually on October 15th of each year since 1964. And whereas significant visual impairment affect approximately 100,000 Wisconsin residents, and whereas the majority of these persons use travel aids, such as a white cane or a service animal, to get around public streets and sidewalks and places of public accommodation. And whereas these travel aids are universally recognized as symbols representing vision loss, and whereas Wisconsin's white cane law requires that motorists come to a full stop before approaching closer than 10 feet of a pedestrian who is using a white cane or service animal. Whereas careful driving and fully stopping when pedestrians are in the crosswalk is beneficial to all residents, including children, elders, and people with disabilities. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Daniel J. Bukevich, Mayor of the City of Oak Creek, do hereby proclaim Friday, October 15th, 2021 as White Cane Safety Day in Oak Creek, and hereby also acknowledge the importance of pedestrian safety year-round. Dated this 5th day of October, 2021.
Great, thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Anybody from council, anything to say? No? This was sent to me, and I actually wasn't aware that it actually had its own day, but after reading it and really looking at it, it affects 100,000 Wisconsinites here in the state alone. And if you've ever met anybody who's visually challenged and you put yourself in that position, you can really start to imagine the challenges they have every day. So I'm really happy that the city stepped up and allowed a mayoral proclamation this way. And it's really something we should be aware of the challenges going on in other people's lives. So with that, again, I think this will be a yearly thing for us because it's very important to recognize that. So no motion is needed on that. Next mayoral proclamation is for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and October is Cybersecurity Awareness. And here to read a proclamation is our clerk, Catherine. Goes on a little bit.
It does. Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October 2021. Whereas the City of Oak Creek recognizes that it plays a vital role in identifying, protecting its citizens from, and responding to cybersecurity threats that may have significant impact on our individual and collective safety and privacy. And whereas critical infrastructure, i.e. financial services, educational institutions, energy, telecommunications, transportation, utilities, healthcare, and emergency response systems, etc., is increasingly reliant on the support of information systems and technologies. And whereas cybersecurity education awareness is crucial for everyone, including large corporations, small businesses, financial institutions, schools, government agencies, the home user, and anyone who connects to the internet, be it with a computer, mobile phone, or other internet-connected device. And whereas monitoring your accounts, being conscientious of what you share online, keeping computer software up to date, creating unique passwords and changing them regularly, installing antivirus programs and firewalls, and using mobile devices and other internet-connect devices safely are ways people and organizations can protect themselves from phishing, viruses, ransomware, other types of malware, financial loss, and loss of sensitive data. And whereas we showcase the need to inspire, engage, and inform the public about the demand, opportunity, and career options available within the area of cybersecurity, and highlight how building the nation's and city's cybersecurity workforce enhances the nation's security and promotes economic prosperity. And whereas the City of Oak Creek is dedicated to providing every individual and public and private organization in Oak Creek the resources necessary to ensure the understanding, implementation, and success of Cybersecurity Awareness Month to help the citizens of Oak Creek stay safe online and connect with confidence. And whereas the Stop, Think, Connect campaign serves as a national cybersecurity public awareness campaign implemented through a coalition of private companies, nonprofit, government organizations, and academic institutions working together to increase the public's understanding of cyber threats and empowering Americans to be safer and more secure online. And whereas the National Institute of Standards and Technology's Cybersecurity Workforce Framework is a free resource to help organizations, both large and small, public and private, improve their cybersecurity practices through a practical approach to addressing the ever-evolving cybersecurity threats and challenges. And whereas the maintaining the security of cyberspace is a shared responsibility in which each of us has a critical role to play, and awareness of essential cyber hygiene will improve the security of city's information, infrastructure, and economy. And whereas the city's cybersecurity awareness program was established in 2018 to enhance and protect the city's cybersecurity ecosystem. And whereas the federal government of the United States of America, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the National Association of State Chief Information Officers, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance all recognize October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And all citizens are encouraged to visit these websites, along with the City of Oak Creek's award-winning cybersecurity website and the Stop, Think, Connect campaign website, or to learn about cybersecurity to put that knowledge into practice in their homes, schools, and workplaces and businesses. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the mayor and the common council of the City of Oak Creek do hereby proclaim that the City of Oak Creek is officially supporting Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2021, passed and adopted this 5th day of October 2021.
Thank you, Catherine.
Welcome.
Steve?
Mayor, I'm sure some don't know about this, maybe some do, but those of us that spend time on Facebook are often see these questions that say, what's the name of your first dog, or the first car that you owned, or other somewhat innocuous questions, but those are questions that are often used for your security questions for various websites. So having done cybersecurity investigations, my thought process and my suggestion is just ignore those things, because we open up the door for potential issues. Just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Anyone else? This was another awareness issue going on that was brought to our attention by no less than our IT department. And our IT department is critical here. Not only here, but everywhere. I mean, cybersecurity protects our infrastructure. Personally, it protects you, your banking accounts, you name it. Our IT department is connected to every single department here. And most people take it for granted. And then when it doesn't work, then all of a sudden it's an emergency. And usually it's caused by somebody not purposely doing it, but by a cyber attack or a phishing scam. So our IT department is diligently working with staff every month to train us on what this is about. But in today's world, it's vital that everybody realizes how to protect themselves, because really nothing works without this stuff. So it's something we're going to go forward with and recognize every October. I want to thank Kevin and his staff for bringing it to our attention. And again, the more we're educated on this, the better off we're going to be on the whole as society. You can see what it did to some of the infrastructure earlier this year with gas supplies in the South and things like that. So this stuff's going on daily. And quite frankly, I would have to defer to an IT guy, but I would have to say they defeat some cybersecurity issues every single day right here within the Oak Creek system. So I want to thank the entire IT department. Great job. Again, they kind of operate behind the scenes, but nothing happens without them. So congratulations, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. So with that being said, we will move on to our first public hearing. That is item 6, and it's consideration of a rezone submitted by Jessica Guzman, F Street Development Group, and the Edison M. Borky Family Trust and the City of Oak Creek to rezone and establish a traditional developmental planned unit development on the properties at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway and 4200 East Lake Vista Boulevard and 9300 South Fifth Avenue. Catherine, would you properly read that into the record, please?
Certainly. Public hearing number 1 is to consider a request submitted by Jessica Guzman, F Street Development Group, Edison M. Berkey Family Trust, and the City of Oak Creek to rezone and to establish a traditional neighborhood development, planned unit development on portions of the property at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway, 4200 East Lake Vista Boulevard, and 9300 South Fifth Avenue. The applicant is F Street Development Group, Edison M. Berkey Family Trust, City of Oak Creek. Property owners, City of Oak Creek and Edison M. Berkey Family Trust. There follows the legal description. Date of notice is September 8th, 2021.
Catherine and Doug, want to bring us up to speed?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. I am Doug Seymour. I'm the Director of Community Development for the City of Oak Creek, and this is a public hearing on a request to rezone the properties at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway, 9300 South Fifth Avenue, and 4200 East Lake Vista Boulevard to a traditional neighborhood development, planned unit development, more often or more commonly known as Lakeshore Commons. And I know that the council is familiar with all the work that has taken place with respect to the entitlements for this public-private partnership along the lakefront. This rezoning is a big part of that. And the rezoning to this newly created traditional neighborhood development district with the planned unit development overlay really is a major milestone in the entitlements for this project, which allows for the closing, which we expect in days, weeks, maybe days, and an eventual start of construction on this this project this fall. If you've been by there, you've seen the construction fence going up there. So we're very excited that we've gotten to this point in a cooperative manner, and are very excited that we've been able to work with our partners in the development community to craft a set of conditions and restrictions which we feel will provide for a neighborhood, a traditional neighborhood that we really haven't seen that necessarily in Oak Creek, or for that matter in the Milwaukee area. These things do occur in places in the south and the west, but this is truly unique with respect to the City of Oak Creek and the Milwaukee area, and probably for the most part Wisconsin as well. So with that, you got the general development plan before you, and let me preface this by saying, I mean, this is a public hearing, and what I'd like to do is maybe just introduce this a bit, and then open it up to the public hearing. So don't let me finish my comments without reading that into the record there. So I appreciate that. But the 717 unit plan, and you have the general development plan in front of you on the screen right now, and I'm not sure why you're seeing that portion of my screen view that's not on there, but that's weird. So I'm not sure if this will advance or not. It will not. And this happened at Plan Commission as well. Oh. Let me, while we're trying to work on that, let me just kind of verbally explain to you. And it's a mix. It truly is a neighborhood, and it's a mix of housing types, which includes traditional multifamily, townhomes, 2 and 3 unit multifamily villas, as well as single family villas, all in the condominium setting within these properties that are being sold to F Street by the city. And certainly as you're all aware, throughout this process, I mean, the uniqueness of this property is such that it did have some environmental challenges to it, which have been worked through very successfully in partnership with the DNR and the EPA, which have led us to this point, which allows our development partners to really propose this unique and innovative residential community to the city and as part of the entitlements for that this evening. And that's what it is. It's a neighborhood. Again, as I might have told you or expressed to you before, we've had many people who would like to do, I'd like to do multifamily here, or I'd like to do, senior housing here. But no one, and to the credit of F Street and the Rinka development team, no one really got what we wanted, and that was we really wanted it, and we're absolutely insistent upon someone who knew what it takes to develop a neighborhood. Lakeshore Commons will truly be that, and I don't know if we got our inputs straight or not, so I'll just kind of go off the record here a little bit. The conditions and restrictions which were established for this do many things, and as you're aware, conditions and restrictions which are attached to planning developments do things like saying you got a general development plan that you've got to follow. It tells you got to, there's certain plans that you have to have designated to follow, landscaping, lighting, grading and drainage, stormwater. That's all in there. I mean, all the traditional elements of planning and development are in the set of conditions and restrictions. But given the unique circumstances of this development, there's also some kind of intricacies and nuances to this with respect to the different regulations that need to be followed throughout in order to conform with the different requirements of the DNR and the voluntary party liability exemption and the post-closure modification. So there's a lot of, at every step of the way, the enforcement and the integrity of those capped areas and that cleanup is woven into these conditions and restrictions, such that you'll notice that while there is for sale product here, they're all condominiums, in addition to the rental product, which is going to be in the multifamily buildings. And the reason for that is, no one person is going to own a lot, for instance. I mean, it's all going to be a master condominium association, so you'll own your unit. Sorry, go ahead. But that the whole common areas are going to be maintained by one, essentially a condo owners association, and that does a few things. That really safeguards the city such that we don't have individual owners who plant gardens or plant trees or things that typical homeowners do in your yard. And we just, given the uniqueness of that development and of the conditions of that, we really need to make sure that developers knew that preservation of the environmental safeguards on that was paramount. So appreciate that. The project itself is in 3 phases, and I don't have the exact numbers for you, and I've got an exhibit that does, but, oh, here we go.
There you go. Cybersecurity saved the day again.
I wouldn't give them that much credit yet. We'll see. We'll see about that. Marksville. We'll go down to this the slide, which kind of shows you the phases. Hopefully, there we go. So as you can see, 3 phases. The first phase is the largest phase, which includes again a different mix of the single-family homes, the multifamily villas, the townhomes, the multifamily, all surrounding Lake Vista Park. In the first phase, we would have 472 total units, which includes, and it's broken down, I won't go into that. Second phase, which is the Berkey property, would include approximately 248 units. In the third phase, we call it phase 2.5, I'm not always sure why we did that, but is also city property that would be developed once the first 2 phases reach certain milestones. And all those milestones were previously approved by the city and the development team and the owners as part of the finance development agreement and as part of the infrastructure development agreement, both of which were recently approved by this council. The one thing I do want to point out on this exhibit, and it's a little bit different than what you have in your packet, is that it does show a multifamily, a maximum allowable number of units, which is actually a little bit higher than what the general development plan shows. And that's intentional, such that should there be opportunities to add density to the multifamily units, multifamily buildings in the form of additional floors, provided that they can park that to the appropriate standard. This would allow that to do them without going back and amending the PUD. So essentially, when you boil it all down, it means that if they can add one more floor to those buildings, they'll do it. But the plan at this point does not show that. Your packet also shows some of the different housing typologies that are in there. Again, the little bit different in such that typically the Planning Commission is going to approve all the site and building plans for anything within a PUD. Given that these are single-family condominiums and 2 and 3 unit multifamily villas, the way we have it structured is such that the Planning Commission is only going to review and approve those buildings which are greater than 3 units. So the townhomes and the multifamily, the clubhouse, those mixed-use buildings. So what the Planning Commission and the Common Council, by virtue of approval of this PUD, is approving these different housing types, and they're all listed in there, and you can see the images that are associated with each. So provided that those housing permits, those building permits come in accordance with those housing types, they don't need to go back to Plan Commission. Again, we don't need the Plan Commission to be reviewing 712 different, site plans. So I think it's a matter of, we're working with those partners long enough, and they've demonstrated that the housing types that they're putting out there, the typologies and the palettes that they're using are something that we all can agree upon. We trust them to deliver on those. And not only do we trust that, but it's the PUD also provides for that as well. The PUD itself is very amenity rich, and saying obviously it's along the lakefront, it wraps around Lake Vista Park, but it also provides for a great amenity package for both the public and the private owners of the condominiums and the residences of the multifamily, including and numerous trail segments, as well as recreational facilities and the clubhouse, pool, courts. There's some areas for raised planter beds, not gardens, but raised planter beds, and some other recreational areas in there. All woven into the fabric of the neighborhood park and the neighborhood, really, again, making this a walkable community, which was very important to us. So, I mean, that in essence, and I'm sure I'm missing many things, and we've got the development team here with us to answer any questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. But the essence of that is we're changing the zoning on these properties from the current, which is multifamily and commercial, and I think some agricultural, to this new traditional neighborhood planning and development, which includes the aforementioned conditions and restrictions, which are part of your packet, and which I will, when we make the motion, if you could include this Exhibit 3, which is slightly different than the exhibit that's in your packet. So with that, this is a public hearing. Now I would ask that anyone has any questions or comments regarding the proposal to rezone these properties to traditional neighborhood planning and development to please, approach the podium, give your name and address, and proceed to address your questions or comments to the Common Council. This public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug stated, this is a public hearing, and this will be the first call. Anybody wishing to speak? Second call. Anybody wishing to speak? Third and final call. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach podium, give your name and address. Seeing no one approaching, we will close the public hearing and move on to item 7, which is consideration of the ordinance to rezone that traditional neighborhood development plan unit development on the properties that were previously listed. We'll open it up. Council? Nothing.
Alderman Dukniak, 3rd District. Doug, I'm sure you know the answer, and we may have already discussed this. I just forgotten about it, though. There was discussion in the past about city services that we, the city, will provide this development. Plowing of the city streets. Did we determine who's going to be responsible for the alleyways of the development?
And so good question, Alderman. The exhibit that you have here is kind of washed out. I apologize for that. We need to get that in a little bit better shape. But a good portion of the roadways, there are a bunch of different types, and you can see all the cross sections in there, will be public. But the alleyways themselves, and actually Road 7, which is in the southeastern portion of the development, will be private and will be maintained privately, such that, I mean, while yes, the city services will be required for the main roadways, the public streets, and we're also taking on some maintenance responsibilities for the stormwater basins and some of the trails, I believe. But the areas which really don't fit in with kind of what our mission are with respect to some very narrow alleys that we aren't really well equipped to service, that will be all handled privately through the Condominium Owners Association. So garbage pickup, for instance, will be private. And snow removal in those alleys and private roads will be private. But there will be, there still will be some maintenance responsibilities for the public, all spelled out in that, I think the purchase and sale agreement and the development agreement, and these conditions and restrictions.
Thank you. Greg?
I'll just touch briefly on discussions at planning. We did discuss this in length. Some of the big concerns that came up, number one was the snow removal. As Doug explained, it'll be privately cleaned up in the alleyways, and they do have areas to store the snow between the houses. So they did address that concern. Another concern that came up quite a bit was the parking. The individual units do have garages attached, so they have parking that way. There's street parking, and then the parking lots are actually assigned parking, I believe, because there was concern over events at the park and people just parking wherever they can find spots. But that will be enforced, and there will be numbered spots in the surface lots around the multifamily units. One other concern that they brought up, some of the commissioners brought up, was the density aspect. And that was explained that is the look and the feel that they're going for with this development. It does fit any density requirements for the traditional neighborhood development. So it's nothing that is out of what's allowed. And that, I mean, that is what is giving this the uniqueness and the look of the neighborhood that it has. So I think all those concerns were addressed, and it was passed by the Plan Commission.
Great, thank you, Greg. Mike, how about you? It's fourth district.
Yeah, Alderman Mike Tolman, 4th District. Doug, on this development schedule sheet here that's headed up with the name Renka on it, under Roman numeral 4, the development schedule, phase 1 infrastructure to commence as soon as possible through as early as August 22nd on, based on the infrastructure, when that's finished, do we make that call, or do they have to agree with us when everything's completed? Or
So that's actually a really good question. And then typically when we do subdivisions, we've kind of learned a lesson from our past, and required all the public improvements to be in before we even record the final plat and issue building permits. And this is a very unique situation. Obviously, we don't see these every day. And as such, we really forged a development sequencing that would allow for some of the condominium plat, for instance, and some of the vertical construction actually to take place prior to the dedication of the right-of-way, which typically we would never do. So this is a big deal for us, and we feel that we've got the working relationship with the development team, and the city engineer has the power that's necessary to make sure that whatever permits are being issued are being done in a safe manner, which allows for to maintain appropriate access for emergency vehicles, for construction vehicles. But at the same time, again, we don't want to, and nobody wants to create a situation that's unsafe. Nobody wants to create a situation where the end users being put in a position where they don't have the services and certainly the access to those properties. So while it's a rather unique development sequencing for us, it's something that we're comfortable with, and I think that we're, again, utilizing and leaning pretty heavily on the city engineer to make those kind of calls. We want to make sure that we're able to serve this during the construction phase, and to provide the public safety and really to make sure that the site itself is safe, so that we don't have, a lot of different condominium owners coming in there and trying to find their lot and things of that nature. So I think from my perspective, and certainly Mike's able to chime in if he wants to, we're comfortable with the development sequencing.
And obviously it's to their incentive to get in there and get these things built so they can sell them. That's pretty obvious. What about the end game? Is there any, once they start building, do we have any hard dates as far as?
Yeah, we do. And I
I
must confess, I'm not as familiar with the finance development agreement. That was kind of Andrew's territory, which establishes those benchmarks that they need to meet before they can move on to phase 2 and phase 2.5, but they are in there.
What happens? Are there any penalties if they don't meet
they don't get a lot of the financial incentives that were being offered as part of the.
I don't see that in here, but
and it wouldn't be. This typically handles this handles the kind of the what you see on the ground. That's why we have the separate documents cover the finance development agreement, the terms of the deal, the purchase sale agreement, as well as the infrastructure development agreement. It's obviously a very complex project, and we're trying to break it down into little bits and pieces that we can manage and we're familiar with, so that we do have those safeguards in place, and we feel comfortable that even though there might be some deviations from the code requirements, as is typical and customary in a PUD, that we've got the documents and regulations and agreements in place to manage the project.
Right. Let's see, I had one other question here. Oh, no, just a statement on the notes from the Planning Commission meeting. They were well done. I actually had quite a few questions, but I think the Planning Commission vetted this thing out very well. Nice job.
As Greg said, the discussion went on pretty lengthy, as well, staff's explanation, and then of course the applicant came up and clarified a lot. So we spent quite a bit of time on it, and again, it was something we've never really seen before. As Doug said, in the PUD, all that stuff was in there. Stormwater management was the new traditional neighborhood that we really had to wrap our head around. And again, it's a different style, but it's going to be a neighborhood just the same, just as we have in any of our districts. So,
Doug, maybe let's just discuss the planning. I don't know. On the architectural standards section of to clarify, and I'm not sure, you have to be purposely somewhat vague in terms of what's included in that, just given what happens in a construction project. But given the potential scope of this and the length of construction, I'm wondering what happens over the shift of time, architectural standards, technology, economics, drive changes in what's shown here, or listed here, or contemplated. How much input does the planning commissioner or planning staff have in that process with the Rinkus team and the developer?
Sure, another good question. So with respect to the single family, the multifamily villas, less so, but recognizing that the planning commission still has to approve the townhomes and the multifamily and the clubhouse, I mean, they'll have ultimate approval authority over those buildings. And in the PUD, will actually be a palette of materials that are allowable for single family.
I see there's some.
And a palette that's allowable for multifamily. So, while we know that materials change every day, and we're introduced to a new material that they were considering using on the single family, which we had never seen before, and that's included in there as well. But given what we expect to be the pace of development happening at this, I don't see any sea changes in materials that are going to be having in the next 3 or 4 years, which we
don't want it either. But we've seen it in one other higher end subdivision, very near this. The Bluffs went through a process where we had to recalibrate and reconfigure and redo standards that we had previously approved. So I just want to make sure we have enough flexibility and enough teeth in that to make sure we can address that.
as we're redoing some of the zoning ordinances, some of that's getting addressed along the way. So the LP siding and the cement fiberboard, these were things that were just kind of dated within our own zoning code, and staff's been working at that. As Doug said, at the speed they're going, probably won't change. The uniqueness of this whole development, though, is that we're all building the same home, so to speak, villa. I can pick out the palette I want and upgrade and have brick or whatever's in that palette of materials, and you may choose something differently. So it's not like they're going to be cookie cutter. Each one's going to be the preference of the owner.
Yeah, but given how close everything is, the neighborhood and the continuity is important, so.
It is, and that's why, I mean, we've got the palette, but there's another layer, right?
Yes.
It's the master condo association, which is essentially the developer, has its own set of rules as far as, what can and can't be built next to each other. So for instance, we had a model that everybody falls in love with. Well, we're not going to have a whole block filled with that model because that really doesn't fit the goals of the objectives of that neighborhood, make it diverse, right? So there are certain things that you can do within that basic model to change things so that we don't have, 10 of the same style on the same block. So that will be governed by the condo association. The plan commission will need to see those condo declarations as part of the PUD. But again, there are different layers with respect to maintaining and assuring that this traditional neighborhood meets the standards that certainly were envisioned by the development team in the city.
You're correct. And maybe Steve, if you want to come up and explain it, we talked quite a bit about fencing because there's a couple material choices and it isn't going to be a hodgepodge of fences. It's designed for this neighborhood to flow. So Steve, if you'd like to address us.
Absolutely. Steve Morales, 756 North Milwaukee Street. To answer your question very directly, there are a lot of safeguards in place to make sure that we don't end up with 7 homes exactly the same. And to the credit of the city and working with Doug very closely to develop these standards, it was our intent to make sure that we can create a neighborhood that's very cohesive, that when somebody chooses one of the models that you see in front of you on the screen and chooses potentially another, we've actually paired them all up simultaneously to see how they look next to each other, to make sure that there is enough variety but continuity, that it doesn't look like homes from 20 different eras coming together. And so there's been a lot of thought put into that, as well as the palettes of materials and color selections, to make sure that there's enough variety in there but enough quality control that the likelihood of somebody picking the exact same model with the exact same color palette next to another home is very unlikely. And then a third safeguard to that, as well, is the brokers who are in charge of working through the sales process of this have their own weekly safeguards, that if they see that one model is being selected too often, or if we see some of the same color palettes being selected too often, there's additional layers there to make sure, hey, let's take a look at that. Let's understand if we need to take some of these things off the table or create some different alternatives and options within the guidelines that are here before you, to make sure that we continue to create a very high quality neighborhood that's a lot of great variety and make sure that everybody feels like they've got a great home to live in.
Thank you. Anything?
You guys nailed it. Thanks.
Mayor Dan, I have another. One of the biggest questions I get from my constituents that have an interest in the development, taking anywhere from a $400,000 to a $700,000 leap of faith by looking at drawings. When are you looking to have some models available on site?
I can't get them built fast enough, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, I've got to work with the great team here at the city. I would love to build them twice as fast, but we've got to follow the right process. It's a very complicated site, and we want to do this as quickly as possible. We're hoping by early to mid next year, we can have that, if not quicker, and make sure that before anything, making sure we're providing a very safe environment that meets all the restrictions that we know we have to follow to make sure that nobody's setting foot on here without really being in a real safe position.
Okay, and Doug, did I understand that correctly, that no units would be started until the infrastructure is complete?
Right. What will happen?
Or phase one, anyway.
For phase one. So the city engineer has the authority to essentially determine when roads and utilities are in such a state that they are able to support vertical construction. And typically that'll be when there's a binder course of asphalt on the streets, and obviously utilities are in, water's in for firefighting purposes. So, I mean, the only thing that won't happen essentially is the last course of asphalt and the actual dedication of the street. So again, that's kind of the uniqueness of this development. Whereas if it were just a subdivision, we wouldn't typically allow those. But given the phasing and the way this is being set up with a condominium, we're comfortable with the way that's going to be presented and implemented.
Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Nothing? No. Before we do go to a motion, I just want to thank F Street and I want to thank our staff. This was a lot of work to bring this together. It was something very different, something very new and very unique to make this challenging property happen. So kudos to everybody. And Doug, thank you, your staff, Mike, same with you. A lot of work went into this and really made our job easier at planning and here at council. So.
Thank you. I think the Plan Commission and the council and the negotiating team and staff has all done a yeoman's job and really, meeting the needs of our regulations, at the same time recognizing the objectives and finding unique ways that safeguard the city to make things happen, which has kind of been our MO for the past several years.
So with that, if there's no further discussion, motion on 7, please.
And I would remind you that we want to replace Exhibit 3 and then replace it with what we have on the screen, and I can make that available for the city clerk as well.
Some higher quality images.
Yep.
So just a clarification on the motion. Do you want something added as stated or not?
Yeah, it's just if you would acknowledge that Exhibit 3 will be replaced. I don't know how you want to identify that, but.
Sure. I think that you could just say Alderman Toman, including the revised Exhibit 3.
Okay.
That should work.
All right, Toman will make a motion to adopt ordinance number 3018, approving the rezone to and to establish a traditional neighborhood development plan unit development on portions of the properties at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway, 9300 South Fifth Avenue, and 4200 East Lake Vista Parkway. Revising Exhibit 3. Is that
Including the revised.
including the revision of Exhibit 3?
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukniak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Look forward to the project coming to life.
Very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Under new business, item 8 is informational on the 2020 U.S. Census data release and the redistricting process associated with it. And again, this is something we kind of take for granted. We see it every 10 years, but it has great effect on us as a city. So, Catherine, would you like to take it from here?
Certainly, thank you, Mayor. Well, I came to you first in March of 2019 with a project plan for community engagement as we entered into our community looking to respond to the 2020 U.S. Census. 6 months passed when we should have probably had our results. We are getting the majority of them. So it's fantastic that we can move this project along and hopefully come to a conclusion for the municipality. Looking through the council report, what I can tell you is our population resulted in 36,497. This is an increase from 34,453 back in 2010. The state of Wisconsin had a population estimate for the city of Oak Creek January 1 of 2021 of 37,600. So the only explanation I can have in the shortage of what we anticipated our population would be for 2020 is probably lack of participation. I know that we were in the mid 80s. We certainly weren't the lowest and we weren't the highest in participation, but that is one factor that contributes to the population number. It is unfortunate, or fortunate the way that you look at it, in that the city receives approximately $1,100 per capita. So unfortunately, without capturing the entire population, as I suspect, we are left a little bit shorthanded. And I do also want to mention that no population included after 2019. So any developments that were post October of 2019 aren't reflected in that population. So if you think back over the past year and a half, almost 2 years of development, really 2 years of development in the city, across the street here, we had some, much in District 3, Arbor Circle, that entire area, Drexel Ridge, none of those along 27th Street. There are a lot of different areas within the city that aren't included in this populous number. So tonight before you is just a really brief synopsis of some of our results as they came back. Really no surprises in our results as far as populated area, age and sex, race and Hispanic. We pretty much stayed where we were. Our next highest ethnicity back in 2010 was Hispanic of about 8%, and we stayed, we still see that today. Same with Asian. I think our Hmong population has risen since the 2010. But there's a lot of information in here. I won't go through it all. You can certainly read it on your own. I can say that if there's anything that you are curious about when you're looking at just this overall glance of our information that came back from the census, I'd be happy to delve into it a little bit further and give you more detailed reporting on that. But I just really wanted to provide a glimpse at this time. What's really important about what we're talking about tonight and completing our census work here in the city is the redistricting deadlines that we need to meet in order to meet all of our statutory deadlines going forward into 21 or 22. So tonight I come before you to take a look at our, a high level of our results. The maps that are included with this report, with no surprise, have already changed in the past 2 days. So attached to this is the Milwaukee County Supervisory Districts as they are today. I have been attending probably about the last 5 weeks. The Milwaukee County has created an independent legislative committee of 6 judges to review all the district information, all of the different numbers, their county supervisory districts, and they have, with their assistance of staff, have come up with, now we're up to version J. We missed I, don't know why. So we are now up to version J. What you see before you on the proposed and the attachment is version F. Version E and version F were very similar. This was to be approved, or we were hoping it would be approved over the past week or so. And instead of that happening, it took a left turn, and now we're up to version J. So I guess I would ask of you, please not to put too much weight into the proposed districts that you see before you, because they most likely will change. There is a version out there that really splits Oak Creek into 3 different supervisory districts, and then the other 2 that they're reviewing tomorrow splits us into 2 districts. Version F, we have reacted to, and we're hoping that we get a similar version of this. The changes that you will most likely see, and this will be on the upcoming council agenda as long as the county legislative committee approves a plan, will split the city into 2 districts. You can see that they've slid over our district over to 13th Street. So 13th and to the west would be 1 district. I can't say right now that that's going to be the case. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure that each ward is a district, a supervisory district. Does that make sense? So we will still have 6 aldermanic districts in the city. We are required for a population such as ours to have each ward be no smaller than 600, no larger than 2,100. We're fine, we have that. What is concerning is with aldermanic districts, we vote currently by district ballots. If there's a supervisory race, currently we have split districts for that, split ballots within a district. With our population growing, we now need to create a ballot for each ward within the city. So we're hoping to maintain the wards at 19. District 6 has 4 wards, the rest have 3. But where you will most likely see a change, and we'll give you 2 options going forward, is along that District 1, 2, and 6. There will be small areas that either shift left or right or up and down to accommodate the new wards. One of the reasons why we have to stay on the timeline, and we're hoping that the legislative committee approves something within the next week, is that we are required to publish our new district ward boundaries by the end of November. As you know, in spring of 2022, Aldermanic District 2, 4, and 6 would be up for re-election, the Aldermanic districts. And in order to pull nomination papers and to run for an office December 1st, we need to publish those wards and boundaries so that obviously an intended candidate understands what population they're representing. So we're hoping to move pretty quickly here over the next week or so, and you will see two different districts depending on which supervisory map, or two different scenarios depending on which supervisory map is approved. Does anyone have any questions about the census?
A lot.
It is a lot.
Good explanation. Questions, comments?
Just have one quick question. Typically happens, it's not specifically just the aldermanic districts, but the county supervisor districts as well. If they redraw district lines and either the supervisor or the alderman no longer lives in the district.
Ding, 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 ding. So I want to tell you that you are welcome, because one of my first goals when I was looking with Greg, who was helping me with the mapping, was to make sure that we didn't do that to any of you. So should that occur in the county supervisor, yes, you would have to reside in the district that you represent. So I think that's why we're up to version J, is that there was quite a bit of movement in the Milwaukee County. They pushed supervisory 8, that district way up in the middle of Milwaukee County. So there will be many positions, and from even up to version J that I've seen, we will have new representation here in the city of Oak Creek either way, because I don't think that the existing supervisors will remain for us. And yes, they will need to rerun for a position. Oak Creek is good.
Anybody else? Once again, our turnout for census was about 80%.
About 85%.
85.
Yeah.
Which is good, but again, everybody that didn't reply to it did trust city funding.
And, just, Mayor, to note that during a pandemic, we're still on the higher end for turnout. We are for every election. Our voter participation is higher traditionally than the county or the state. Very proud of that fact. I think people are very engaged in the city of Oak Creek. So it's somewhat disappointing, but overall, I would still say that we did fairly well during a pandemic for census turnout.
I know you started very early and you really did a nice job early on. So we were, at all reports at ICC, we were very much ahead of the game countywide. So kudos to you. So, any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you, Catherine.
Welcome.
Appreciate that. That'll get us to fire, and that's item 9, and that's consideration of a resolution approving an intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the city of Oak Creek and the city of Franklin for a shared full-time fire inspector. I don't see anybody with us from fire, but basically the premise. Oh, go ahead, Max.
Max Gagan, Assistant City Administrator and Comptroller. So before you tonight is an intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the cities of Oak Creek and Franklin for a shared full-time fire inspector. And this process really began in the latter part of 2020. So in the 2021 budget, there was funding included for a part-time fire inspector position. That was $29,000. We have not filled that position yet this year. We've had a number of personnel who've been on light duty who've been able to fill in and provide these fire inspection services. But as people are returning to work, we're starting to see some more challenges. And that's when Chief Kresick approached Chief Remington for the city of Franklin to see if there was an appetite for a shared full-time person, with the thought being that trying to recruit a high-quality individual for a part-time job and then retain that person longer term is harder if it's a part-time position rather than full-time. So the two chiefs had a conversation and are asking that we move forward with a intergovernmental cooperation agreement for the shared full-time fire inspector. The 2022 executive draft budget does include the additional funding necessary for that full-time position. That full-time position would be that of the city of Franklin. The city would be billed on either a monthly or quarterly basis up to that $47,000. So we wouldn't be accepting any additional liability for things like workers' comp or health insurance. It would just be that fixed amount, which is $47,000 for the year 2022. And certainly, I think when I had a conversation with Chief Kresick, he believes that if there's any details that need to be worked out between the city of Franklin and the city of Oak Creek, they're confident they can overcome that. And it sounds like both chiefs have a shared vision for what they're looking for in a fire inspector program, certainly being more fire prevention and community education than, say, a heavy hand. So ultimately, that shared vision for this position is what's going to make a successful partnership for the two communities. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Great. Thank you, Max, for that update. It's great. Anybody? Kind of straightforward. Okay, great. Thank you, Max. Motion then on 9.
You'll move to approve resolution 12268-10052, approving an intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the city of Oak Creek and the city of Franklin for a shared full-time fire inspector.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
And item 10 is our summarized treasurer's report for the accounts ending August 31st, 2021. Unfortunately, Barb could not be with us tonight, but if you do have questions, I'm sure Max could stand in adequately. So if you have anything, if not, I encourage you to reach out to Barb. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 11, which is the License Committee, which I will turn over to Alderman Kirkowski.
Thank you, Mayor. I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review the License Committee report on tonight's agenda. Does anybody have any questions, cares, or concerns? Seeing none, Kirkowski make a motion to grant the various license requests as listed on the October 5th, 2021 License Committee report.
Dukenyak second.
Roll call.
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
And item 12 is our vendor summary report for the week of September 29th, 2021. Everybody, please take a look, and if there's any questions, feel free to speak up. And if there are no further questions, we will accept the motion on 12.
Thank you, Mayor. Gale moves to approve the September 29, 2021 vendor summary report in the total amount of $409,450.31.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Okay, before we adjourn again, just thank you to staff. We had a pretty big item tonight. We make it look pretty easy, but a lot goes into that. And again, appreciate all the work you do. Again, Kevin, thank you for everything you do back there. Do appreciate that. And one last thing, we didn't recognize it, but this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So there's multiple walks going on in the area. This is a disease that claims countless lives every year. Everybody wears pink for awareness. I put some on. I'm trying to put some on every week for it. So if you can, take some time, reach out and support the cause, because there's a lot of people suffering from it. So with that, adjournment.
Kirkowski make a motion to adjourn.
Oracle second.
Roll call.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Budget workshop Friday.
Budget workshop on Friday. Public is welcome to that. That is an open meeting. So if you're interested in what the city's doing with the dollars, please plan to attend all day Friday.